Imagine a society that has found a cure for some of the most pervasive terminal illnesses, from cancer to heart disease, but it comes at the cost of other human lives. Imagine a world where a mysterious, isolated society exists, hidden from the rest of the world. Imagine a life where you can have as much sex as you want to without the possibility of having a child. These themes, among others, are the focus of Kazuo Ishiguro's novel Never Let Me Go.
About Kazuo Ishiguro!
Author Kazuo Ishiguro was born in Nagasaki, Japan, before moving to the United Kingdom when he was 5. Fascinated with human memory and the effect of technology in society, Ishiguro wrote prolific books including The Remains of Day, When We Were Orphans, and Never Let Me Go. Caught it! Ishiguro's writings reached high levels of praise and acclaim, earning him prestigious awards including the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2017. The tone that Ishiguro utilizes within the novel is reflective, as when the narrator looks back at the memories of her past. Despite the themes of tragedy within the book, Ishiguro also uses a conversational tone. This is used when the narrator appeals and talks directly to the reader.
Characters!
The story largely revolved around 3 characters, Kathy, Ruth, and Tommy. Kathy is the protagonist of the novel and serves as the narrator. She is observant, caring, and self-aware. For example, while many of the kids at Hailsham bully and isolate Tommy, Kathy respects Tommy and treats him like a friend. While Kathy tries to be as unbiased as possible, she concedes that she may not be a reliable narrator because it comes from her memory.
Ruth is Kathy's childhood best friend. However, she is often seen as selfish and hot-tempered, causing frequent periods of tension and relief between both girls. When the characters transition into their teenage years, the feud grows when Kathy and Tommy engage in a romantic relationship with each other. At the beginning of the novel, she is the leader of her friend group and is very controlling and manipulative, even creating exclusive groups that she is the leader of. However, she is also strong-headed and independent. Later in the book, Ruth transforms into a selfless and supportive friend.
Tommy, another childhood friend of Kathy, seems to be the only one at Hailsham who lacks artistic ability. Because of this, he becomes an outcast and is often mocked by his peers. Due to constant ridicule, Tommy adopts a short-tempered and emotional personality, often lashing out in tantrums until he matures in teenage years. Within coming of age, Tommy deepens his connection with both Ruth and Kathy. However, both relationships pose different advantages and disadvantages. By the end of the novel, Tommy and Kathy eventually fall in love.
Setting!
Never Let Me Go takes place in 3 main acts. The first part of the novel is in Hailsham, a serene, isolated boarding school in the English countryside. Filled with greenery and imagery of spring, this represents the characters' childhood and growth. However, there are mysterious aspects of the school as well. The students are constantly spending their time doing art, but for no apparent purpose, and a mysterious woman named Madame frequents the school. After graduating from Hailsham, the characters stay at the cottages as they prepare for their donations. The cottages are described as the remains of a farm that had gone out of business years before, with buildings that are virtually falling down. The cottages represent the transition of the characters' lives between their optimistic childhoods to their bleak futures. As is such, the weather of the cottages is colder and more autumnal than that of Hailsham.
The setting for the final part of the book occurs in the hospital centers where the donations take place, as well as the surrounding area. The simplicity of the setting represents the character's loss of individuality. The days of the past where their art and creativity were valued are over. Their only purpose now is to donate their organs. When Kathy and Tommy enter Madame's house to ask for a deferral, the darkness of her house emphasizes the lack of fate for the characters.
Plot!
The story begins with Kathy's remembrance of her childhood at Hailsham, a school-like center where children dwell and prepare for their time in the outside world. At first, Hailsham sounds like a relatively normal facility, but as the story progresses, we are slowly introduced to mysterious topics such as donations and carers, which the children are familiar with but do not quite comprehend. Art is also greatly emphasized in education at Hailsham, as students must contribute their creations to a gallery every so often, but its purpose is unknown by both the students and the reader. By part 2 of the book, it is subtly revealed that the children that attend Hailsham are artificially produced clones. After they have finished their education at Hailsham, Kathy, Ruth, and Tommy move to the cottages, where they can further prepare for their futures without many restrictions or guidance. With their newfound freedom at the cottages, they are able to discover more about their purpose and explore their desires for love as well. Kathy develops a romantic interest in Tommy, but in an attempt to keep them apart, Ruth threatens Kathy and lies to her, resulting in the 3 of them drifting apart. This spurs Kathy to leave the cottages to go and become a carer. The final part of the story projects Kathy's experience as a carer and exposes her reflections on her past decisions. Eventually, Kathy reconnects with Ruth and decides to become her carer. After a while, Kathy and Ruth are able to find which facility Tommy is staying at and catch up with him as well, but unfortunately Ruth completes after her second donation. Before she does, she apologizes for keeping Kathy and Tommy apart and gives them the tools they need to regain their connections and discover what the true meaning behind their journey through Hailsham and the cottages is. Tommy and Kathy find Madam and confront her about Hailsham and the reason behind the gallery. However, their meeting presents only disappointing results for Kathy and Tommy, which are devastating enough to cause them to split from each other. After his fourth donation, Tommy completes as well, and Kathy's left with a feeling of emptiness in her life as she no longer has any connection to her past.
Couch talk / couch combo.
How can you ask a world that has come to regard cancer as curable? How can you ask such a world to put away that cure, to go back to the dark days? There was no going back. However uncomfortable people were about your existence, their overwhelming concern was that their own children, their spouses, their parents, their friends, did not die from cancer, motor neuron disease, heart disease. So for a long time, you were kept in the shadows, and people did their best not to think about you. And if they did, they tried to convince themselves you weren't really like us, that you were less human, so it didn't matter.
Guys, I just really love that quote that the ghost just spoke to us.
It was so moving.
In such a beautiful voice from the ghost. And yeah, like you said, if I was to describe it in one, maybe 2 words, I'd probably call it a moving quote. So I just can't wait to discuss that at our just random, quirky couch combo.
Wow.
So, Ronik, what did you think of the quote?
It just made me really reflect on what I would be like in that position, because I would do anything to prevent like my friends and my family from not having to go through suffering from like disease like cancer or heart disease, but I don't know if I would want to put that on somebody else.
Yeah, and how at the end it was talking about how even though these characters weren't technically classified under humans at the beginning of the book, they still have these, humanistic qualities about them, and they grow over time. So how you were saying that you would try to prevent your family from going through this, like at what cost?
Yeah, something that I didn't really think about until I read the book is that throughout the book you kind of get this idea of how devastating it is that the characters are just going to eventually, donate so that other humans can live. They're just basically resources. But something I didn't consider is that, like she said, there are thousands of these donation kids that just live in slums or in camps. So
True.
a lot of them live lives of torture for that purpose as well.
What I thought was really interesting was how the author integrated our society into it as well. You can see reflections of our society, so it makes the book really makes you think about how eventually we might have to deal with the ethics of this situation and how we're gonna decide what's best for our society.
Oh, I like that. And that brings us into part 2 of our couch combo.
Ooh.
Meaning of the work as a whole.
Wow.
So, okay, I'll get us started. So, kind of going off of what Veronica said is that, what? Obviously, this book was written, after the Human Genome Project. Technology like the internet and smartphones are becoming a part of our, everyday life. So, Kazuo Ishiguro is kind of, presenting to the reader, at what cost does development come? What cost does, our safety and our health come?
I think it's really also important to acknowledge how individuality is such a huge part of this book, and even though the characters were cloned, they are nothing like the people that they have been cloned from. And I just think that the fact that they do art, or the fact that they create these connections with different people, just really shows the importance of, individuality between every single person.
I think it just also shows how our society sees different classes of people, because in the story, the clones are a whole different class of people in society, and they're looked down upon. And I think that we also look down on a lot of groups of people, but we just aren't willing to face that fact in our society.
Yeah, and also, it's those groups that are looked down upon. They're, the foundation of our society.
Yeah.
Someone, do you want to
Yeah, I think that it's, really sad that in this book, they look down upon their own creations that they, made to support their society and to, benefit themselves, but they don't see them as, I don't know, they see them as just, aliens and don't treat them as something that's useful to them.
They don't treat them as a part of their society, even though they are created to help people in that society.
Yeah, and their survival depends upon their existence.
Yeah.
We are going to conclude this crash course with a never-before-seen semicircle time moment. Now remember, everyone, you may only talk if you have the elder recorder. I'll get us started off. The question is, what did you learn from this crash course? So I'll get started. So like 1, everything. But 2, Kazuo Ishiguro's use of setting in the novel is really, really interesting. It's in 3 parts. First in Hailsham, then in the cottages, then in the hospital in the surrounding area. And that reflects the transition of Kathy, Tommy, and Ruth's lives.
Yeah, and the whole novel takes place in a dystopian future where people are cloned, and those clones are the 3 main characters that we see, and we go through their lives where they are supposed to donate their organs, but they become human along the way.
Yes, and we also learned about the 3 main characters in this novel: Kathy, the protagonist and the narrator; Ruth, the protagonist's best friend, even though sometimes she doesn't always act like a best friend; and Tommy, the love interest in the novel.
All right, and we learned that the meaning of the work as a whole was just that this book really reflects our possible future society. However, even though these clones didn't seem like very humanistic to other people in the society, we could still see reflections of their individuality and just how we might have to deal with ethics like this in the future.
Do, 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 do.